All right, you're watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm Frank Morano. Now, it's no secret that in addition to the very real public health crisis we've been experiencing over the last few months, we've seen an economy which was as good as it's been at any point in our country, at any point in our country's history. We've seen it go to be a shell of its former self. We're seeing unofficial unemployment rates approaching 25%, millions of jobs lost. Folks are wondering where we're headed now. How long will it take America to recover? And up until this point, one of the largest bankers of the United States, one of our largest creditors, and one of our largest consumer nations has been China. How are things going to look with China going forward? Well, we're fortunate enough to have a guy that is quite an expert in all things related to the economy, especially trade with China. He's Tom Kehoe. He's the CEO of Kingsbridge Strategies and a trade advisor to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative and to the USDA. Tom, it's good to see you again. How have you been?
Fine, Frank. Nice to see you too in this COVID world that we live in on a beautiful day. You know, what would we be doing in 2019 on a day like today? What were you doing in 2019?
You know what? It's a great question. I'll have to go back and check the
Yes.
record, but not this. That's for sure. But
What a difference a day makes, huh? Or geez,
so,
wild.
Tom, our friend Larry Kudlow said on television a couple of days ago that he expects the next quarter to see the largest single quarter of economic growth in history, possibly 20 to 25% economic growth, something that we've never seen before. Do you share Mr. Kudlow's optimism about how quickly the economy can bounce back from where we are right now?
Well, I'll defer to Larry because he's much more of an expert on economic forecasting. But what he did say on Tuesday that I think is fascinating, and he said it at the same press conference, was that the administration, this current administration, is now going to incentivize by tax incentives and quote unquote pay the expenses for American manufacturers to bring the manufacturing back from China to the United States.
Yeah,
We've never done that,
it's
which
a
is,
shame. It's a shame it took a pandemic
yeah, it
to
took,
have our leaders
exactly.
invested in bringing American
But
manufacturing
it's
back.
to their credit that they're going to do it, and they're putting that in place right now. Look, the pandemic came, we needed PPEs, which everyone knows now is personal protective equipment, gloves, masks, gowns, ventilators. 95% of what we use in PPE is made where? China. A lot of
Mm.
it's already made in Hubei province, right near Wuhan. So this has been a real wake up call. Plus, America finally realized that a lot of the pharmaceuticals that America takes, prescription and non prescription, the ingredients are made in China.
Well, it's
So I
such an
think,
important point. Now, during the campaign 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I guess at this point, the president made this a big issue. The fact that there was so many goods that Americans were consuming and purchasing every day. I think even the shirt off my back, unfortunately, that's made in China. One of the things we didn't hear very much about until the so-called trade war and the president's steel tariffs was all the people that have been making money shipping goods to China. I'm thinking a lot about our country's farmers in places like Iowa and Middle America who have done a ton of business sending pork, sending soy, sending all sorts of goods
ship
to
seafood there.
China. Now, Tom, what becomes of those farmers? I know they've gotten a little bit of aid in the last couple of relief packages, but going forward, if we're seriously talking about decoupling from China, and if China's economy is not going to buy into all these American-made goods going forward, what happens to those middle American farmers?
Frank, those middle American farmers are, unless we're able to keep that market, it's going to change the dynamic of what they're doing with what they're going to be doing with their products.
Mm.
So I don't know. Right now, this is a good question. I mean, America makes a lot of goods that are shipped there. You know, corn, wheat, sorghum, you name it. Soybeans. I was on a trade mission to China where I was with the executive director of the Soybean Association. That's their biggest single market. I
Sure.
don't know what is going to happen with those markets if if they close up. And there's some saber rattling going on by the Chinese right now. The defense minister of China, this Wu Fughe, Wei Fughe, Weifughe, he said on Tuesday that China's in fighting form and it's a good time for the Chinese to fight, and that the U.S. and China relations are at a dangerously high level of very delicate negotiations. So who knows what's going to happen? But I do know this. I do know a couple of things. Kudlow now has said that the president wants American manufacturers to come home. We're going to pay them to come home. China's saber rattling. China at the 2 sessions in Beijing just passed the first part of removing autonomy from Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is no longer going to be autonomous, and this 2 rules, forget it. They're going to just live under the jackboots of the Chinese.
It's such a great point that you bring up. So Mike Pompeo, we broke the story yesterday. Mm-hmm. He announced publicly that the United States no longer views Hong Kong as autonomous from China. Now, with that in mind, the House of Representatives, in part because of China's interference with Hong Kong's autonomy, and in part because of China's treatment of the Uyghurs, in which they herd these Muslim minorities into essentially concentration camps, there's serious talk of additional sanctions on China. Based on what you know of China, China's government, and China's economy, do you expect China to retaliate in any additional way towards the United States?
Well, look, they could say we're not going to buy your merchandise anymore. I mean, this is a real look. The China, and I've been on with you several times and with John Tobacco on the show. The ink still hasn't dried on this trade deal. We signed in January, so now here we are in late March, late May, but the past 10 or 11 weeks we've been fighting with them over who. Did they hide the Wuhan virus from us, et cetera, et cetera? There's a lot going on now, way more than what was going on during the trade negotiations. We've got the Wuhan virus. They're snuffing out Hong Kong. They're saber rattling. We're bringing manufacturing home. Everything's back in play again.
One final question with respect to the economy, and then I want to ask you a little bit about how things are going there locally out there on Long Island. Yesterday, Governor Cuomo was at the White House. He and the president were discussing some sort of an infrastructure investment to get the economy moving again. Aside from the tax incentives that you referred to earlier, do you think some sort of massive infrastructure investment could be the trick to get the economy going with a kind of a rocket fuel instead of a whimper?
Well, look, that was a little bit before my time, but we all read about it. FDR, right after the war ended, started the public works program called WPA. They built the Hoover Dam. They built a lot of the infrastructure that we now have just come to have lived with in our lifetime. So it definitely could. It could be, Frank. It could put people back to work. Look, America, I'm a local elected official here on Long Island. We're always spending money on infrastructure. We're always paving the roads, doing something with our sewer plant. It's not a bad idea. But, I mean, ultimately, the taxpayers are going to pay for it. But I think what the governor is saying, and I tend to agree with him on this, and I don't always agree with Andrew Cuomo, is that something's got to be done, and we need to look a little bit outside the box. But
in the final minute that we have left, Tom, I know you're a village trustee out in Northport. You're doing a great job there. How are the local citizens in your community viewing this shutdown? The fact that they still can't go to restaurants or to movies or to so many businesses that were a normal part of people's everyday lives?
Well, let's talk. The restaurant operators are very upset. Why? And there's a lot of restaurants in my community that have outdoor dining tables on the patio or on the back deck. Why? They're saying, why can't we open? If I can go to Costco or King Cullen or ShopRite or Stop and Shop, why can't I have dinner or lunch outside on the patio? So there's a lot of pressure on the county executives, Laura Curran in Nassau and Steve Malone in Suffolk, to get that open. And additionally, people they're fed up now. De Blasio closed the city beaches. Everybody came out to Long Island and invaded the beaches. So this has got us. I think what you said at the opening of the show, John is at a suntailing parlor where people are fed up. I think you're going to see some restaurant business owners just say, I'm opening up. I've got 2 or 3 little kids. I've got a mortgage. I've got a wife. I can't pay my bills. I've got to open up.
Tom, we're going to have to leave it there. It is always a treat to talk with you. I could talk with you all day. I hope we can chat with you again next week.
Thanks, Frank. You look great. Say hi to John for me.
Thank you. We definitely
Okay,
will.
sir.
We're going to track John down. We'll see if we can find him next. Nico, send out the search party. Make sure the sheriffs haven't strung him up and hooked him up to a cactus somewhere. Coming up next, the sheriffs versus John Tobacco and Sunbelievable. Where is John? Have the sheriffs hauled him away? Hopefully not before Nico and I get paid this week. We'll tell you coming up next. You're watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm Frank Morano. We'll continue right after this.